Welcome back to Project 82, the SCP Remote Access Database. Which case file do you require?
Back into it we go. Hello, D092057. Thank you for coming. Let's get started, shall we? Item number SCP-227. Object class, safe. SCP-227 is to be kept in a climate-controlled room at a temperature of 21 to 24 degrees Celsius and humidity no higher than 10%. Anyone touching the object is required to wear surgical gloves. A supply of these is to be kept with SCP-227 at all times. Food, drink, cigarettes, or any other sources of contamination are not allowed within the containment area. Loose clothing, hair, or other adornment is not recommended. Only personnel level 3 clearance or higher are allowed to access SCP-227, though lower-ranking staff are allowed to use the object while under supervision. If SCP-227 needs to be transported to another location, it should be sealed in an insulated, airtight container filled with an inert gas. SCP-227 is a bronze clockwork device measuring 10 cm by 16 cm by 26 cm and weighing 5 kg. SCP-227 is somewhat similar in appearance to reconstructions of the Antikythera mechanism, an incomplete and heavily corroded Greek artifact thought to date from approximately 100 BCE. Unlike that artifact, SCP-227 was found intact and apparently fully functional. This is partly because SCP-227 was found on land at instead of at the bottom of the Mediterranean, but the lack of significant damage is remarkable. Preliminary testing of SCP-227 shows that it may have some ability to repair itself over time. Further testing is pending approval from O5 level staff. SCP-227 has one major dial with 3 hands on the front face. This dial has several concentric rings which rotate independently. The rear face has 2 major dials with 2 hands each. These dials are surrounded by a spiral groove through which some of the internal gearing is visible. A number of smaller dials are arranged around the rest of the object. The total number of these minor dials visible at once varies when the object is in use, as does the number of hands on each dial. There are 3 small cranks on the right side of SCP-227. Turning any of these sets the moving parts of SCP-227 into action. The top crank causes the most rapid change. Some of the smaller hands have been observed moving at speeds of over RPM. Extended use of the top crank causes SCP-227 to heat up significantly. Personnel are advised to use caution when turning the top crank to avoid damaging SCP-227 or injuring themselves. The middle and bottom crank are used for medium and fine adjustments, respectively. The object is covered in a large number of inscriptions. The majority of these are in Attic Greek, however, some are in various writing systems that have yet to be deciphered. These include Linear A, Cretan hieroglyphs, and 1 or more unknown languages. The translatable text is essentially a manual of operation for SCP-227, with the exception of one passage which states, the full significance of this passage is under investigation. Early indications are that SCP-227 is an incredibly accurate astronomical computer. Symbols corresponding to the Sun, Moon, and planets are predominantly placed on the front major dial, along with many other symbols of unknown meaning. The rear major dials have markings consistent with several ancient calendar systems. These include the Calippic, Metonic, Saros, and Sotic cycles. There are also at least 2 more previously unknown calendar systems present. Addendum SCP-227-01. Further study has revealed that SCP-227 is able to compute the locations of bodies that were only recently discovered by modern astronomers. For example, one set of hands and markings corresponds to the Kuiper Belt object 50,000 Quaoar. Quaoar is difficult to detect even with the Hubble Space Telescope. How the designer of SCP-227 was able to predict its orbit is unknown. Addendum SCP-227-02. SCP-227 has demonstrated an ability to predict even aperiodic astronomical events. One researcher was turning the top crank and happened to notice a minor dial appear very briefly. Fine-tuning revealed that the minor dial first appears on a date corresponding to the 23rd of February 1987. This is the date that the supernova SN1987A was first observed on Earth. Addendum SCP-227-03. Advancing SCP-227 past the date corresponding to 2000 is not possible. A force of up to 100 newtons applied to the bottom crank is unable to produce any movement past this date. Testing with additional force has not been authorized due to the risk of damaging SCP-227. When the object is set to this date, a large number of dials and symbols appear which are not seen in any other setting. The meaning of this final setting is unknown. Some researchers believe that this may represent an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario, such as a wandering brown dwarf, the so-called Nemesis hypothesis, a gamma-ray burst, or Addendum SCP-227-04. The date of the final setting on SCP-227 was observed to change once, to a time years later than the previous date. The symbols that appeared at this new final setting were somewhat different from the previous one, but their meaning remains unknown. Research into what may have caused this change is underway.
Case file ends. Which case file do you require?
Item number SCP-244. Object Class Euclid. When not in testing, SCP-244-1 is to be placed in a room with its own thermostat, kept at a temperature of no less than 38 degrees Celsius. This room must have its own ventilation system to provide constant air circulation. SCP-244-1 will rest on top of a scale attached to an alarm, so that any abrupt changes in weight from SCP-244-1's cap's sudden removal or from SCP-244-1's displacement may be immediately detected. If the alarm goes off, SCP-244-1 is to be immediately retrieved, capped, and placed back on the scale. In the event that SCP-244-1 spends longer than 4 hours uncapped and active before retrieval is possible, initiate Procedure 244-2123-B. SCP-244-1 is a Tunisian-style earthenware jar made of common ceramics mixed with traces of and decorated with silver filigree. The inside of SCP-244-1 always has an internal temperature of -37 degrees Celsius and 125% humidity, regardless of external conditions. Persons handling SCP-244-1 invariably describe it as cold to the touch. SCP-244-1 includes a cap of identical make and style to the jar itself. When SCP-244-1 is uncapped, condensed water vapor will flow from its mouth. The rate at which the vapor emanates increases if SCP-244-1 is left lying on its side or suspended upside down. This vapor is identical in composition to ice fog, with a temperature of -37 degrees Celsius and 125% humidity as it exits SCP-244-1. Over time, this fog will disperse through whatever area SCP-244-1 is in, lowering ambient temperatures and raising humidity levels proportionally. The amount of time it takes for SCP-244-1 to fill an area with fog varies depending on the size of the space, the amount of moisture already in the air, and the temperature at the time SCP-244-1 is opened. If SCP-244-1 is left uncapped outside of any structure, it will still produce water vapor and lower the surrounding temperature. However, the effect may be considerably diminished or enhanced by the effects of the sun, wind, local topography, and/or local vegetation. In any space where SCP-244-1 has changed the environmental temperature and humidity to -37 degrees Celsius and a 125% humidity, there is a chance of encountering SCP-244-2, directly proportional to the amount of time the area has been fogged over. SCP-244-2 is a mobile gaseous entity visible only as a dense cloud of greyish fog. Whether it simply uses SCP-244-1's own fog as camouflage, or is actually a part of said fog, is still undetermined. Thermal imaging shows that SCP-244-2 is far colder than its surrounding environment. How SCP-244-2 achieves locomotion is not known, but testing and observation has made it clear that SCP-244-2 usually remains motionless unless there is a source of heat nearby. SCP-244-2 is attracted to any source of heat energy and will move to envelop such sources. Because of SCP-244-2's own inordinately cold internal temperature, any object that comes into direct contact with it usually flash freezes. Biological heat sources, including humans, are invariably killed by the flash freezing effect, and mechanical or electronic devices ice over. SCP-244-2 appears to grow in size as it consumes thermal energy. In a sufficiently large beclouded area, there may be multiple instances of SCP-244-2. SCP-244-2 will not attempt to consume heat sources with a temperature equal to or greater than 600 degrees Celsius, and will actively move away from such sources if they are brought closer to it. For this reason, SCP-244-2 is easily repelled with burning wood or other combustible fuel fires. SCP-244-2 has been observed to disperse if exposed to great concentrations of heat in a short period of time. History: SCP-244-1 was first discovered in the basement of a recently emptied Chaos Insurgency-occupied military base, where it had completely filled the basement level with ice fog and at least 2 manifestations of SCP-244-2. It was retrieved by Dr. Morris, good man, with the assistance of Mobile Task Force Beta-62. It is unknown whether the Chaos Insurgency had placed SCP-244-1 in the basement as some sort of diversionary tactic, or if they themselves were looking into it. Addendum: whatever SCP-244-2 is composed of, it is certainly not normal water vapor. At those temperatures, mere water would surely become a solid, as indeed would most gases. However, taking samples of SCP-244-2's material has proven difficult, as it is both gaseous and freezes most devices applied to it. I suspect that this may be related to the in SCP-244-1, but studying that mineral has a host of problems all its own. Dr. Morris.
Thank you for your participation in Project 82. Transmitting Psioanalytic data to Dr.